Thank you for joining us. I'm Millicent Walker in Lagos. It's the 237th day since Russia invaded Ukraine, and today a power facility in the southeastern city of Dnipro has been severely damaged by two explosions this morning. Krylo Tyshenko, deputy head of the Ukrainian president's office, says two strikes hit an energy infrastructure facility, causing severe damage. He adds that the state emergency service were on site in some areas may experience a loss of electricity and water supply. Prosecutors say two people were killed in an attack on the capital. Plumes of smoke were seen billowing from around a power station near the Dnipro River. Russian missiles crashed into infrastructure targets across Ukraine as Moscow stepped up what looked like a deliberate campaign to destroy electricity and water facilities before winter. Meanwhile, Russia said its forces were keeping up strikes against military and energy infrastructure targets, confirming Ukraine's suspicions. The Russian Defense Ministry said in a statement that the attacks were carried out with high-precision, long-range air and sea-based weapons. The targets were military command and energy infrastructure of Ukraine, as well as arsenals with ammunition and foreign-made weapons. The ministry's spokesperson, General Igor Konashenkov, said that Russian forces destroyed in part a platoon of U.S.-supplied HIMARS, high-mobility artillery rocket system, and 3 U.S.-made Firefinder radars in Russia-controlled parts of Donetsk region. Russian forces repeatedly attacked both towns as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said heavy fighting is ongoing in the area. Earlier, Ukrainian President also said Russia had destroyed 30% of Ukraine's power stations in what he called terrorist attacks. Well, for the Ukrainian air defenses, it shot down 3 S-300 missiles in the suburbs of the city of Kiev. Resident Pavlo Koval showed a large crater in his field as demining crews inspected one of the downed missiles. Koval said he did not see the missile land, but heard a noise that sounded like the one made by a helicopter. There were reports of power facilities being targeted in Kharkiv, a city with a pre-war population of 1.43 million people close to the Russian border. Local authorities said Russia launched 8 missiles on Kharkiv, with 5 hitting an industrial area in the city, in addition to the 3 that were intercepted. And on the 4 regions of Ukraine that Moscow declared it had annexed in recent weeks, the Kremlin said that it falls under the protection of Russia's nuclear arsenal. Asked by reporters if the regions were under Moscow's nuclear umbrella. Now here's what Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said, quote, "All these territories are inalienable parts of the Russian Federation and they are all protected. Their security is provided for at the same level as the rest of Russia's territory." Russian President Vladimir Putin said last month that Moscow was ready to use nuclear weapons if necessary to defend the territorial integrity of Russia. U.S. President Joe Biden said October 6 that his threat had brought the world closer to Armageddon than any time since the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis, when many feared a nuclear war might be imminent. Putin last month proclaimed that the territories Moscow was taken from Ukraine would be part of Russia forever. But Russia does not wholly control any of the 4 regions and has yet to define their borders. The annexation was condemned as illegal by Ukraine, its Western allies, and an overwhelming majority of countries, about 143, in the United Nations General Assembly. Well, the White House condemned Russian attacks on Kiev and other Ukrainian cities, which began on Monday last week, and said the United States stood with the Ukrainian people. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said Ukraine could count on the U.S. support for as long as it takes. Next week, the United States will send munitions and military vehicles to Ukraine as part of a new $725 million security assistance package aimed at bolstering the country's defense against a Russian invasion. It will bring the total of U.S. security assistance since Russia invaded Ukraine February 24 to more than $17.5 billion. And let's take you to the energy front, where a preliminary investigation of damage to the two Nord Stream gas pipelines in the Danish part of the Baltic Sea showed that the leaks were caused by powerful explosions. According to the Copenhagen police, the Danish findings appeared to be similar to those of Swedish prosecutors, who said two other holes in the pipelines also seemed to have been caused by explosions, and that the case was being investigated as an act of gross sabotage. Video released by the Swedish Coast Guard earlier last month showed bubbles churning up the Baltic Sea above the leaking Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines. Swedish and Danish authorities are investigating 4 holes in the ruptured pipelines, which link Russia and Germany and have become a flashpoint in the Ukraine crisis. In response, the Kremlin said that the investigations into the blast that damaged the Nord Stream gas pipelines under the Baltic Sea appeared to have been set up with the intention of falsely blaming Russia. Kremlin spokesman said elementary logic showed the pipeline damage was a blow to Russia's interests. He said the investigation was being conducted secretively and without Moscow's involvement. A missile slammed into an apartment building in the southern Ukrainian port city of Mykolaiv today, killing at least 1 man. A body lay covered on the floor as emergency workers examined the remains of the apartment building, now destroyed, leaving a massive crater after the missile hit in the early hours of the morning. University technicians said the moment of impact was impossible to describe. Rescue workers pulled a dog out of the building, the rubble, and handed it to another, who cradled it in her arms as she surveyed the destruction. A nearby flower shop was also completely destroyed in the strike, leaving its glass frontage shattered. Men and women were seen examining the debris-strewn store to salvage whatever undamaged inventory they could from the devastated interior. And discussions on extending as well as expanding a UN brokered deal allowing Ukrainian Black Sea grain exports have been positive and constructive. Now, this is according to the UN spokesman, Sylvain Dujarric, who said that the fertilizers and raw materials required to produce them originating from Russia are key to worldwide discussions on extending and expanding the UN brokered deal. United Nations officials met Sunday and Monday with Russia's Deputy Foreign Minister, Sergei Vashin, on the issue. According to Russia's Defense Ministry statement, Russia told a top United Nations representative that the extension of a landmark Black Sea grain deal was dependent on the West easing Russia's own agricultural and fertilizer exports. Let's go over to a court now in the southern Russian city of Rostov-on-Don that has postponed till the 9th of November a hearing in the case of Denis Murgia, a purported member of Ukrainian Ada Battalion. The charges against Murgia include membership of an illegal armed formation and training to carry out a terrorist activity. This according to regional media organization Dawn 24. Now, the man was arrested in April when he tried to cross the border between Ukraine and Russia, pretending to be a refugee. Murgia purportedly joined Ada Battalion in 2015 and headed one of its units in Lysychansk, Luhansk region in eastern Ukraine. Now, Russian and Ukrainian sources say that Murgia was a part of a sabotage team which destroyed a bridge in the self-proclaimed Luhansk People's Republic, now said to be a Russian-controlled territory. We continue away from Russia's invasion of Ukraine to other stories. This time we're going to the United Kingdom, where Britain's Prime Minister Liz Truss has apologized for mistakes in her program that caused investor confidence to evaporate and her poll ratings to plunge before nearly all of it was finally shredded Monday, October 17. But she said she would not step down. Finance Minister Jeremy Hunt, who was appointed Friday after Truss sacked her close ally, Kwesi Kwarteng, jettisoned the remaining major planks of her tax-cutting agenda Monday, including scaling back her vast energy support scheme. Now, Truss and Kwarteng attempted to upend British fiscal policy by unveiling £45 billion of unfunded tax cuts last month to snap the economy out of stagnation.
Now, I recognise we have made mistakes. I'm sorry for those mistakes, but I've fixed the mistakes. I've appointed a new Chancellor. We have restored economic stability and fiscal discipline. And what I now want to do is go on and deliver for the public. We were elected on the 2019 manifesto. I'm determined to deliver on that. My message is we should be focusing on delivering for the British public. We are in difficult economic times. We're in difficult international times with the war being perpetrated in Ukraine. And now is the time to focus on delivering, making sure that we are delivering on our energy package. So before we stepped in, people were facing energy bills of up to £6,000. We've now put in place the energy price guarantee. We've reversed the national insurance increase. And that's what I'm thinking about as Prime Minister.
Well, markets which plunged after her September 23 mini-budget are still under strain, even after Ms. Truss's finance minister tore up the plans. It appears she is now fighting to survive just after 6 weeks when she became prime minister. Well, it's not clear whether Truss's apology would quell a growing rebellion in her governing Conservative Party, with a handful of lawmakers urging her to quit. Dozens fear they will lose their jobs at the next election. Well, our London correspondent Juliana Lanka tells us more about the climate there.
How long Liz Truss will last as Prime Minister is a question that even the embattled leader would struggle to answer. The talk of the markets may be the axing of the mini-budget by the new Chancellor, the de facto Prime Minister Jeremy Hunt, on Monday. But Liz Truss's problems are so much more than that. Just a couple of hours ago, a new YouGov survey conducted between the 14th and 16th of October revealed that just 10% of Britons have a favourable impression of Liz Truss. This is down from 15% just a week earlier, and also 55% of her own Conservative ministers want her out of number 10. In fact, some are even suggesting that Boris Johnson should come back and replace her. There are, of course, issues with the labour market. The TUC have been holding their annual conference in Brighton, and they have been forecasting a winter of discontent, something that this country hasn't seen since the 1970s, because, of course, inflation has reached double digits and wages are just not going as far as they used to. During the hustings, Liz Truss did promise that she would be cutting taxes, and she also said that she would be freezing energy bills for the next 2 years. But of course, that's all been ripped up with the new Chancellor. So what does happen to the millions of households who are on the brink and are struggling to pay their bills? It's all a little bit of a mess at the moment, and to say that it's been chaotic in Westminster this week is an understatement. Juliana Olayinka, reporting for Channels TV News in London.
Well, let's go over to Iran. We'll come back for more on that. We have a guest to join us more about what happens next. But this time, as many as 23 children have been killed in an ongoing mass protest in Iran. A spokesperson for the United Nations Human Rights Office told a briefing in Geneva today. According to the spokeswoman of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, the deaths were caused by live ammunition, metal pellets at close range, and fatal beatings.
A month after demonstrations erupted across Iran, the unabated violent response by security forces against protesters and reports of arbitrary arrests and the killing and detention of children are deeply worrying. Some sources suggest that as many as 23 children have been killed and many others injured in at least 7 provinces by live ammunition, metal pellets at close range, and fatal beatings. A number of schools have also been raided and children arrested by security forces. Under the human rights treaties accepted by Iran, the Islamic Republic has an obligation to protect children's right to life under any circumstances and to respect and protect their rights to freedom of expression and peaceful protest. Along with the mass arrests of protesters, our office has also received reports of the arrests of at least 90 members of civil society, including human rights defenders, lawyers, artists, and journalists. On the 12th of October, 3 lawyers were arrested as they demonstrated outside the Bar Association in Tehran. We call on the Iranian authorities to hold prompt, impartial, and independent investigations into all alleged violations, including the killing of children, and to ensure that those responsible are prosecuted. Broadly, we urge the authorities to address the underlying causes of the grievances of the population instead of using violence to suppress the protests.
And we're back to our top story of day 237, Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the power facility in the southeastern city of Dnipro that has severely damaged some infrastructure there. Joining us right now, Anna Chernikova from Kiev. Anna, it's good to see you. Thanks again for talking to us. What's the update today? Are air sirens still going off in Kiev?
Good evening. Yes, especially in the morning, there were a number of sirens around the country. And again, today, the city of Kiev and other cities in Ukraine as well woke up of explosions. Today is the second day in a row that Russian forces continue the attacks on the critical infrastructure and particularly energy infrastructure. What we know from confirmed information as of now, there were 3 hits in the city of Kiev. One of the energy facility on the left bank of the city, of the capital. We know that this caused electricity cut off in that particular area, district of the town, of the city, and also in the Kiev region, in some parts of the Kiev region as well, which were connected to this power plant. Due to this attack, 3 workers were killed of this power plant. Repair works are still ongoing. The operation of the electric train was renewed. This was reported by the mayor of Kiev, Vitaly Klitschko, later in the late afternoon. But still, there are some problems with electricity in that area, and repair works are going on. The damages are quite serious, is what we know. And also similar situation is in Dnipro and in Zhytomyr region. The city of Dnipro also suffered at least 2 hits, very serious damages, and repair works are still going on, and there are problems with electricity and water supply at the moment in the city. The city of Zhytomyr, which is central part of the country, also there were 2 hits there, and the city is for the moment has no electricity and water supply. All the hospitals are running on the reserved energy sources. In general, around the country, Ukrainians are asked to be very reasonable in using electricity, try as much as they can to decrease the use of energy, and to make sure that they have enough drinking water at home in case situation is getting worse, or just in general, to be able to ensure that they have drinking water in case of emergency. Also, President Zelensky announced today that due to these attacks, which are targeting critical infrastructure, starting from October 10th, so for 8 days now. So these attacks damaged 30% of Ukrainian energy system. and energy stations in particularly. Also, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, Dmytro Kuleba, yesterday during his conversation with his colleagues from European countries, highlighted that this attacks on Ukrainian energy sector is not only attacks on Ukraine, it's also attacks on the European security, as Ukraine was one of the countries who was exporting electricity to Europe before these attacks. So situation in general, well, is difficult. For the moment, the city of Kiev is stable, at least the right bank of the city. Left bank of the city has troubles with electricity, and people are making everything possible to reduce the use of electricity to make it easier for energy system to operate and to stabilize.
And, you know, Anna, with all of this targets to critical infrastructure, we understand the presidential aide saying the situation across Ukraine was now critical and the entire population needs to prepare for a tough winter. One wonders what exactly, you know, winter would look like, and, you know, if there are any stopgap measures the government, you know, will be helping with.
Definitely, winter will not be an easy one, and the government is saying this quite clearly for this past month. In addition, the government of Ukraine was actually preparing civilians for these attacks, because for the past months there were announcements from the government that Russian Federation would probably try to increase the attacks on the critical infrastructure, energy infrastructure, as winter is approaching, as heating season is approaching. In terms of what the government is doing now, we of course hear about, Ukrainian society received certain instructions on how to behave and how to prepare themselves for this difficult winter. Also, the government is preparing certain backup plans, which apparently would be announced sometime soon, but at least we're hearing that there are measures. Basically, the government are preparing and taking certain measures to get ready for emergencies, because emergencies are expected still, and the government is saying that the risk of these emergencies is very high, and of course it could be called critical, because basically energy system is under attack around the whole territory of Ukraine, every region, west, east, north, south, and central as well. So basically, what we can see for the moment that these attacks are targeting the whole network of energy institutions, energy facilities. Ukrainians already have been informed that the heating would be minimal this winter, so 16 degrees would be a standard, and the standard point, because normally it's like 22, just for comparison. And in terms of electricity as well, Ukrainians should definitely decrease the use of electricity, at least, especially during this rush period in the evening and in the morning. So the measures that government are preparing, all the details would be apparently announced sometime later, sometime soon. For the moment, we don't have any particular details. We're just hearing that government are preparing these measures.
And Anna, as well, there is one opinion out there that Russia is attacking Ukraine's infrastructure because it is suffering defeat at the front lines. Is this anything that you're hearing as to why indeed they have put up, reinforced the escalation in Kiev and other cities?
Could be the truth. Again, we can only analyze the facts that we have confirmed in front of us. What we have confirmed from the Ukrainian General Staff today, that for the past 24 hours, more than 500 Russian soldiers were killed at the front line, which is quite a huge number, especially in comparison with all the statistics for these months, because normally it's like 200, in general 200 per 24 hours. So today we hear amount of 500. What is also important that Ukrainian, for these 2 weeks, actually, the last 2 weeks, Ukrainian military officials and general staff, they're quite silent about what's happening at the front line. Everyone is concentrating and talking about this energy facility attacks and residential buildings attacks, and actually military officials use this time to be silent. And what they say officially, that for the moment, counteroffensive actions which Ukrainians are taking are going on, and Ukrainians are actually doing a big job at the south and east front line, but no details are announced at this point of time, as general staff is saying that this operation needs to be kept in silence. So we just have to wait for announcements. But again, today, the head of Ukrainian intelligence, Mr. Budanov, said that some big news are coming. So probably we can expect certain information. What we know from what was confirmed before, that Ukrainian forces are now not only concentrated in the south, in the Kherson region, but also in the Zaporizhia region. So it creates this southeastern front line. Again, we don't have any, details or numbers. This is just what we know, that we're not only talking about Kherson region, because the Zaporizhia region is also very important and should be considered for the south eastern counteroffensive that Ukraine is currently going through. In terms of the east front line, situation is very hot in the city of in and around the city of Bakhmut, and this is probably the hottest spot now at the eastern front line. Very heavy battles are happening. Russian forces had some certain advances. This was also confirmed by the Ukrainian general staff. Ukrainians also keep their position. So situation at the front line has not been changing for this past 2 weeks. The last big change was the Ukrainian advance in the south, in the Kherson region. So we will just have to wait, but as experience shows that Russian forces use these attacks on the civilian areas when they had difficulties at the front line. So this could be true. Again, we have to wait for official confirmations. But what also was confirmed by the Ukrainian general staff, that the destruction of at the Crimea breach, all the damages that Crimea breach has at the moment after the explosion happened at the beginning of the month, made it very much more difficult for Russian forces to supply Russian forces in the south of Ukraine, so south front line, and it definitely creating difficulties.
And Anna, before we let you go, the UN brokered deal on grains. I mean, how is that working so far? I mean, since that brokered deal, the UN, Turkey, Russia, and Ukraine.
For the moment, the deal is continue to work. We hear that it is finishing, according to papers, sometime next month, if I'm not mistaken. But what was said officially announced recently, that and UN representatives were also talking about this, that this agreement should be continued, and negotiations are going on. This is the only information we have. For the moment, it is working, and for the moment, the vessels are carrying grains, continue to carry grains from Ukrainian ports.
Anna, thank you so much. We always appreciate your time, and do continue to stay safe.
Thank you.
We go on to France now, where shocked neighbors laid flowers and candles today in tribute to a 12-year-old girl who was murdered in Paris, and a brutal killing which some in the opposition seized on to ask for tougher immigration policies. The Paris prosecutor's office said the girl disappeared Friday and her body was discovered later that evening in a plastic trunk outside her building in the 19th French capital arrondissement. She had suffered bruises and cuts and died asphyxiated. The prosecutor said this in a statement. The main suspect, a 24-year-old woman, was seen on CCTV exiting the building in the afternoon, carrying heavy luggage, including the trunk in which the victim was found. Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron met with the girl's parents. He offered them his condolences and assured them of all his solidarity and support in the ordeal that they are going through. He says it upsets everyone. Chinese President Xi Jinping and his Ugandan counterpart, Yoweri Museveni, today exchanged congratulations on the 60th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic ties between the two countries. In his congratulatory message, Xi said that with an everlasting traditional friendship, the two countries have in recent years established comprehensive cooperative partnership, steadily increasing political mutual trust and deepening cooperation in various fields. China and Uganda have firmly supported each other on issues involving their respective core interests and major concerns, and coordinated closely in global and regional affairs. The Chinese president said in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic, the two countries have supported and helped each other in times of difficulty. Well, let's take you now to Sudan's main political coalition that has presented its vision for a fully civilian-led authority to lead a transition to elections. This follows stepped-up efforts to end an 11-month-old stalemate between the ruling military and pro-democracy forces.
A 2021 military coup ended a power-sharing partnership between the Armed Forces of Sudan and the Forces of Freedom and Change (FFC) coalition, derailing a transition to democratic elections and plunging the country into political and economic turmoil. Nearing the anniversary of the takeover, the military has not yet succeeded in naming a prime minister. However, this summer, military leaders say they intend to exit politics. FFC leaders said they had been informed the military had accepted a draft constitution circulated by the Sudanese Bar Association that would allow for civilian rule.
There must be a limited sovereign civilian level. It will be honorary without executive or legislative powers, and it will be the supreme commander of the armed forces. But this sovereign level with limited member should be made of civilians. Also, a fully civilian cabinet headed by a prime minister from the forces of the revolution with real powers and tasks separated by the transitional constitution that was issued by the Bar Association. Also, a legislative council in which there will be diverse participation and which represents the plurality and diversity of Sudan, with participation of the resistance committees, the forces of the revolution, and with proper representation of women, political forces, and different social groups.
In a statement, the FFC presented its vision for what the coalition will seek in any future agreement with the country's military rulers. In a proposal likely to draw criticism from protest groups, the transitional authority will include the participation of rebel groups to remain in government following the coup, political parties from outside the FFC who participated in writing a draft constitution, and union and protest groups. Under the FFC's vision, the military will exit politics and the country's cabinet, while Sudan's Sovereign Council, which had served as Sudan's collective head of state, will be fully civilian and chosen by revolutionary forces.
We believe there can be no democratic transition in Sudan without addressing the issue of the plurality of armies through a reform process that leads to a single professional national army that distances the military institution from politics, battlefields, and partisan conflicts. Any political solution must include detailed tables and a matrix that explain the process of reforms.
A transitional parliament will include all parties and groups, excluding the NCP, and the arrangement will continue for up to 2 years before elections. The agreement will also allow for reform of the security sector and for a civilian-led Security and Defense Council headed by the Prime Minister and including representatives from the army and other security sector elements.
In Africa, 3 United Nations peacekeepers have been killed when their vehicle hits an improvised explosive device in the Kidal region of Mali. UN spokesperson said that the peacekeepers were on a mine search and detection patrol. 3 other peacekeepers were also seriously injured and are receiving treatment at a UN hospital.
But I can already, unfortunately, share with you some more tragic news from Mali, where 3 United Nations peacekeepers died today when their vehicle hit an improvised explosive device in Tessalit in the Kidal region of Mali. The peacekeepers were on a mine search and detection patrol. 3 other peacekeepers were also seriously injured and are receiving treatment in a UN hospital. We send our deepest condolences to the families of the peacekeepers, to our colleagues in the mission, and we wish a speedy recovery to those who were injured. This year, already 12 UN peacekeepers were killed in Mali in hostile acts.
Quick follow-up on the
And a prolonged drought last season was followed by Chad's heaviest seasonal rainfall in over 30 years this year. It has left towns and even parts of the capital N'Djamena navigable only by boat and forced thousands to flee. Farmlands and pastures are also underwater, leaving the herders with little grazing land.
Chadian nomadic farmer Fatim Chari fends off a hungry calf as she tries to squeeze the last drop of milk from the udder of a 6th cow she's milking.
As you have seen, I tried to milk 6 cows, but I have not managed to get even 1 liter of milk. They are stressed, sick, and malnourished because of the drought and floods. The herds traveled over 2,000 kilometers in a few days to escape the humidity of the floods. And it is difficult for the cows to produce milk for us in these conditions.
Chari, 34, a mother of 4, is in a group of 50 nomads and a herd of about 450 that found refuge in a dry scrubland, approximately 100 kilometers west of the capital, which was some respite for the group. In a normal season, they would take a year to cover around 2,000 kilometers as they move from place to place for grazing. They have just covered that distance in 3 months, fleeing rising waters and humidity.
We subsist on selling milk to the surrounding population, but now there is not even enough to eat. Last year, we saw our cows starve to death before our eyes. This year, we are facing another disaster. We need food and vaccines to preserve our herds, or we will end up losing everything.
Her husband, Adum Maloum, says the scrubland where they've sought refuge has no pasture and water for their tired herd that has grown skinny and emaciated. The nomads depend on the milk for their livelihood, like nearly 5 million in the Central African nation of 16.4 million. They're facing acute hunger and in need of food assistance. Back in N'Djamena, local consumers are also feeling the pinch. Milk produced by nomadic herders is getting more difficult to find in markets and in grocery shops.
We want to consume our local dairy products because they are fresh and organic, but they are becoming increasingly rare on the markets. We are forced to consume imported dairy products. They are not well preserved, and they spend months in containers. These imported products create illness such as constipation. But we have no choice because our locally made fresh products are not available.
Authorities in Chad say the heavy rains this year are destroying crop production and potentially creating another food insecurity situation in the coming months.
Meanwhile, Australia and Singapore agreed today on a green economy deal to boost cooperation on climate investment, financing and technology. Singapore's Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong told a news conference in Canberra that the agreement will start with initiatives such as developing a list of environmental goods and services that could be given preferential trade treatment. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese cited a $30 billion sun cable project which aims to export solar power from northern Australia to Singapore via Indonesia as an example of what the agreement aims to achieve. Lee asked about U.S. export controls targeting the Chinese semiconductor industry and said the issue is very serious, raising concerns about economic decoupling.
Today we open a new chapter in the comprehensive strategic partnership between Australia and Singapore. The Green Economy Agreement signals collective resolve to confront challenges as we transition our economies to net zero. It will support clean energy innovation, unlock business opportunities and create jobs, and help deliver our emissions targets while positioning Australia as a renewable energy superpower.
The first GA we are signing is with Australia. We're very happy at this. It's the world's first such agreement, and it will support the transition of our countries to net zero emissions, as well as create jobs and growth opportunities in green sectors, and promote the development and commercialization of green technologies. I think the Biden administration's latest move is a very serious one. I'm sure they have considered it carefully. It can have very wide ramifications. We will have to see how things work out. But we do worry that valid national security considerations may trigger off further consequences and may result in less economic cooperation, less interdependency, less trust, and possibly ultimately a less stable world.
To all the stories, a Spanish Coast Guard boat transported 53 migrants to the port of Spain's Gran Canaria today after they were found traveling in a wooden boat in the Atlantic Ocean. According to the Red Cross, the African migrants, which included 2 women and 1 child, were rescued 9.6 kilometers from the southern part of the island. Now, every year, thousands of people leave North Africa to make the perilous journey to Europe. A total of 22,316 migrants crossed by boat to the Canary Islands in 2021, after 23,271 made the crossing in 2020. Last year, some 4,400 people were lost at sea attempting to reach Spain. This according to a monitoring group. Now, the contradiction in the words and deeds of officials of the United States is the main obstacle to an agreement on the revival of the 2015 nuclear deal. This is according to Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Nasser Kanani at a weekly press conference. He said that U.S. officials sent messages to voice their viewpoints about the nuclear talks on the one hand, while showing contradictory behaviors and practice on the other. He noted that Washington's approach failed to contribute to or supplement the nuclear talks. Mr. Kanani stressed that grounds exist for reviving the nuclear deal and all sides return to it, but the issue currently hinges on the U.S. government's political decision. According to him, we can return to the deal whenever the U.S. shows the necessary will. However, Iran will not keep waiting for an agreement, he emphasized. Iran signed the nuclear deal, formerly known as Joint Comprehensive comprehensive plan of action with world powers in July 2015, agreeing to curb its nuclear program in return for removing sanctions on the country. However, former U.S. President Donald Trump pulled Washington out of the agreement and reimposed unilateral sanctions on Tehran, prompting the latter to drop some of its commitments under the pact. And a large gathering yellow diamond valued at about $15 million was unveiled at Sotheby's in Dubai. Now, the Golden Canary diamond is said to be one of the largest cut diamonds in the world, weighing at about 303.1 carats. Well, it is also the world's largest flawless diamond ever graded by the Gemological Institute of America. The stone is making its debut in the UAE before kicking off a world tour that will include stops in Hong Kong, Taipei, and Geneva. It will then be auctioned in New York December 7th as part of Sotheby's magnificent jewel sale. Showing the gem in Dubai reflects the importance of the region as a potential market. The Golden Canary stone was initially discovered in the Democratic Republic of Congo in the 1980s. A young girl playing in a pile of rubble near her uncle's house spotted the unusual-looking stone, which was then sold to a local diamond dealer. At the time, the stone, in its rough state, weighed about 890 carats. Well, since then, the diamond was recut to showcase the full richness and depth of its color, resulting in the pear-shaped diamond on display today.
So today at Sotheby's Dubai, we are unveiling the Golden Canary, which is one of the world's largest cut diamonds, weighing a huge 303 carats. It is also the world's largest flawless diamond ever graded by the Gemological Institute of America. We are unveiling it in Dubai as the first stop on its world tour before it goes to Hong Kong, to Taipei, and to Geneva, and then it will be sold at Sotheby's New York on the 7th of December. Dubai, the rest of the region, the Middle East in general, is a very important market for us. This is the 4th time this year that we've displayed a very important coloured diamond in Dubai. We are also displaying the Golden Canary at the Dubai Diamond Exchange on Wednesday afternoon, which is what we do every time a diamond has been coming here recently. And in the past as well, so earlier this year we had the 111 carat Earth Star diamond, which is also a brownish colour. And this actually sold to a private collector from the region. So there's obviously a demand for these type of diamonds from collectors here.
Still a girl's best friend. That's our program this evening. Thank you for watching. I'm Melissa Walker. Bye for now.